Hey everyone, so in today's video I've got two projects I want to tackle in my front yard. We're going to start by transplanting a lance-leaf Coreopsis plant. A few months back, one of my many flower beardtongue plants died and left a gaping hole in my front flower bed, so I figured I'd replace it with an existing plant from my yard. And then the second project, we're going to trim up my bird of paradise plants. I have two very large bird of paradise plants in the front yard that are in desperate need of a trim, so we'll break out my pole saw and I'll trim them up and get them looking great for fall. I also wanted to give you an update on two flowering plants in my front yard, the first being my milkweed plant. So my milkweed plant was dealing with a complete infestation of milkweed beetles. I addressed those beetles, got rid of them, the plant bounced back, it's looking better than ever, so I'll show you that. And then I also wanted to show you my forked blue curl plants. I have 4 of them, they're blooming, they look amazing, they're probably my favorite plants in my entire yard. So with that said, let's jump right into today's projects. Looking at the first project here, I've got this gap here in the mulch where I previously had another one of these many flower beard's tongue. The plant didn't make it, so I pulled it out, and I figured to fill this gap, I'll separate these two Coreopsis plants. The one that's down here closer to the street, I'll transplant right over here to fill the gap. Project 1 is done. Now all I gotta do is water it in. So turning our attention now to the bird of paradise plants, I want to give you an overview of the work area. You can see this plant is massive. I'm gonna break out the pole saw so I can reach the top to trim off a lot of these older tattered fronds. I'm gonna do the exact same thing to this plant over here closer to the house. With this one, I'm also going to pull out a lot of these suckers at the base. So the plant will push out a lot of new growth from the bottom. And if you don't come in and maintain it, it will spread. So since this one is up so close to the house, I like to maintain that base so that it doesn't spread and take over the garden bed. Looking at the tools we're going to use for the project, I've linked these tools in the description of the video. On the left is my 14-foot extendable pole saw. In the middle is my handsaw, and then on the right are my loppers. We'll use the loppers and the handsaw to cut out the suckers at the base of the plants, as well as any of the lower fronds. And then we'll use that 14-foot extendable pole saw to reach the highest point of the plant so that we can cut off the fronds at the very top. bird of paradise plants are looking so good now that they've been trimmed. They're rejuvenated, they can actually breathe, the air can get through them. So to recap, I pulled out all the sucker plants here at the base of this plant close to the house. I also trimmed back a lot of the older fronds up at the top. I took out a lot of the fronds at the top of this plant. I thinned out the middle section and then also removed some of the suckers that were growing up from the base. These plants are ready for the fall. So now that those two projects are done, it's time for an update on the flowering plants. Starting here with my milkweed plant. A few weeks ago, I mentioned in my September yard tour video that my milkweed plant was dealing with a complete infestation of milkweed beetles. The plant had stopped blooming and it lost almost all its leaves, so I knew I had to do something. I also knew that I couldn't spray this plant with any pesticides or neem oil because this is the host plant for the monarch butterfly. If I sprayed anything, I risked harming the butterflies, the caterpillars, and their eggs. So I actually went through and I pulled all the beetles off one by one by hand, and that did the trick. The plant bounced back, it's put on a ton of new growth. You can actually see that it has got buds at the ends of all the limbs, and in some cases it started re-blooming. So I got blooms here, more blooms there, and some there. Looking at the forked blue curl plant, you can see there are quite a few blue flowers on it. When I filmed the September yard tour video a few weeks ago, there weren't any flowers, but just in a matter of weeks, I've got a ton of blue flowers, lots of buds. You can probably see the navy blue flower buds all over this plant. So I will definitely have flowers for the coming weeks. This is one of my favorite plants in my yard. It's so unique. The top curl part of the flower, it's like feathers, like nothing I've ever seen before. Really interesting flowering shrub for the yard. So that's a wrap for today's projects and the flowering plant update. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content related to gardening, landscape, and yard maintenance, please subscribe to my channel. And as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you find time to get out in your yard.